Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Ah, yes, my friends, conservative, not bitter indeed. Kamala Harris is on, or was on, with Stephen Colbert recently here. I don't know if it was last night or the night before. Out there trying to sell her new book, 107 Days, which I'm sure all of you are going to flock to the bookstore or jump online or whatever to purchase this thing. But I want to talk about this. I want to talk in particular about one of Kamala's answers to one of Stephen Colbert's questions. And I'm going to resist the urge. You know, I know a lot of people. I have not. This is maybe unique to this program. I don't know. I am not one to... it doesn't do anything for me to mock the opposite. I will have fun, don't misunderstand, but I'm not going to gloat. I'm not going to I don't know that I've talked about Kamala at all since she lost the election. Maybe I have in passing. Maybe I have reminded myself and the rest of you in this audience just how terrible a presidency would have been under Kamala, but there's no gloating here. She's just not on my radar. I know that she was looking to be, or considering to run for governor of the People's Republic of California. And I don't think we've talked any about this. But she's on with Stephen Colbert, and I want to play this ridiculous answer. I've got some thoughts about some of the dialogue here, and I think that I just want to share it with you as I was going through today's news. There's other things in the stack of stuff as well, which you can always access on our website, toddhuffshow.com. But that's where we are going to start today, my friends. Before I do that, though, let me remind you, if you care about taking care of your heart's health, if you like to do things in a natural way, a non-invasive way, a simple, very affordable way that doesn't involve doctors and prescriptions and medications, friends, I think you should consider taking Solti. Solti is an all-natural supplement that has been proven. The science has spoken. Kamala mentions scientists in her response here to Stephen Colbert. Those scientists, maybe not those specific scientists, but who knows, maybe those scientists that she's referring to have found that Solti actually lowers cholesterol for the people that they've tested. It may do the same for you. I take it. You can do the same. Solti.com, SOLTEA. Promo code Todd's going to get you 50% off your first order and free shipping to boot. Solti.com, promo code Todd. All right. Let us... I'm going to play this sound. And by the way, I just told Oz. I checked. I just played this and listened to the sound bite. I played it for her to hear. She had some facial expressions that matched my facial expressions with some of the stupidity. But I've just literally played it through the system here. So if it doesn't play immediately like sometimes it does, I don't know what to tell you. This happens for some reason. But that being said, just a couple words about this. Kamala Harris, as you well know, about a year ago, almost exactly, it was the first week of August. If you remember, this was not long after Joseph Robinette Bribery took to the debate stage. After challenging Trump, after basically taunting Trump before the debate, I remember there was a video the White House put out when Biden was in the White House. Thankfully, that shenanigan's over. But Biden was in the White House a year ago. It probably was about a year and a month ago, early July. They were talking about setting the date for the first debate. I just saw this video not too long ago. And Biden said, I'll debate you anytime, anywhere, pal. You name the place. I hear you're free on Wednesdays, right? Some comments about directed at Trump and some of the court cases and all that stuff that was happening regarding the 34 felonies of that Trump was charged and convicted of. Anyway, they were talking trash. They were saying Biden is just, I mean, this guy was just on his A game, right? You've seen those clips as well. Biden is the most on top of it president, the most quick-witted human you've ever met in your life. You walk into a room with this guy, you better be ready. You better be on your toes. He's going to ask you for a bunch of stuff that you're not going to know, even if you're Karine Jean-Pierre, even if you're a member of the administration. Heck, maybe even if you were Kamala Harris herself. Listen, this guy was just on his game. That's what they were telling us a little over a year ago. And you look, by the way, I don't want to get into this too far with Joe Biden, but you look at what's happened since then. And everybody now admits, everyone now acknowledges, in fact, it is amazing to me. It is amazing to me how some people refuse to accept what they can see firmly and clearly before their own eyes. They refuse to accept any of that until the people with the credentials, the people with the so-called expertise tell them that what they see is in fact what they see. They were willing to trust the experts. They saw this guy fall. They saw him tip his bicycle over. How in the world do you tip a bicycle? I don't understand that. He tipped a bicycle over from a virtual standstill. Both feet planted on the ground, topples over. Who does that? I don't know that my toddlers did that. When our kids learned to ride a bike, we actually got them it was called a Strider bicycle. If you've got young kids, this isn't a partner of the program, and you're wanting to, I would encourage you. We had a friend that had a Strider bike. It's a bike. It's a tiny little bike. It's a bicycle without pedals, without the chain, and it teaches kids, for little kids, to balance, and they'll, kind of use it as a scooter, scoot with their feet on the ground, then pick their feet up and ride the bicycle so that when they're old enough to actually add the pedaling, they don't have to learn the balance. They've already got the balance down. We did this with our kids. They're much older now. In fact, we've got one who's on the verge of driving here in the next month or two. Anyway, but Biden, I go back in my memory bank to my, our little 2-year-old or 3, whatever he was, 3 probably, with his both feet on the ground, and he didn't tip his bicycle over. Biden did. They saw Biden face plant on the stage of the Air Force Academy. He gave the graduation, the commencement speech, face plants. The guy had to be directed where to stand. Remember the one time he was meeting with G7 leaders, or maybe it was leaders from the European Union or some such thing, and they were in a photo op, and he's back in the background wandering off into the horizon. I mean, you remember this stuff. You remember when he stood and spoke. This was long before the debate, by the way. I have talked about this stuff for years. I talked about it in 2020. I said the guy wasn't mentally fit to be president then. They knew it. By the way, they did know it. We've gone through that extensively. But they on the left, the political power brokers in the Democrat Party, absolutely knew this guy was unfit for office, but they thought that was their best chance to win. And so they peddled him out there. They tried to hide him from the public as best they could, but they also tried to prop him up and tell us how smart and how quick-witted and how just perfect for office this guy was. Sure, he was 81 years old or whatever, but man, he was thriving. He was like a 30-year-old out there, 40-year-old guy just clicking on all cylinders. That's what we were told. Then we saw the debate. And it was an utter disaster. That was in July of 2024. Now, by the way, they moved the debates up earlier, in part so that the Democrats had time to react. In fact, if this was how Biden responded, and he did. And so we were going through a year ago. It seems in some senses like this was 20 years ago, but a year ago the Democrat Party, they were trying to figure out what they were going to do regarding the presidency or as far as their candidate went. Were they going to have some sort of a primary? Was Kamala going to be coronated? Was Biden going to be able to fight and hold his position. There were behind the doors fights. We went through this during the time of this happening all about exactly a year ago. Well, Kamala comes out victorious in that sense. She was the one that was determined to be the nominee. And just like Democrats normally run their primaries, they picked their candidate for their political party without any input from their political party. And they tell their political party, members of the Democrat Party, the rank and file, that this is democracy. We're saving democracy in this country. And in order to save democracy, we are going to tell you who you're going to have to vote for, who your candidate is. You're not going to have a say in who your candidate is on your quest to save democracy. Here she is, by the way, go vote for her. And she had 107 days to campaign. And it was a terrible campaign, as you remember. She was a terrible candidate. But again, there's baked into the system, my friends. I don't know the exact percentages, but I think the Democrats could run any person or maybe any inanimate object and get 40% of the vote right off the top. I just think that that's the realities that we're dealing with. You have people who are members of the godless radical left in there. That's a portion of this. That's probably half of the Democrats, half of that 40%. So you've got another group of people who either are just buying the media lies, who take their direction from the political talking heads. They're lifetime Democrats and they're emotionally tied to the party. They believe in this whole identity politics gig. They are concerned first and foremost about the race, gender, ethnicity of the candidate. They don't care about his or her policies. Some people, of course, in that group that would vote for Kamala or whoever, no matter what, were stirred into this blind rage, this absolute hatred of President Donald Trump so much that they would have, again, voted for anybody. So Kamala, I don't know how many votes she actually went out and got, is the point, in 107 days. Now, I'm not here. Hear me say this. I'm not here to gloat. I'm not even here to mock that she lost the election. I'm actually here to say something different, and you may not agree with this. But listen, I mean, for somebody to run a presidential campaign, no matter what I think of them, I mean, they pulled something off to get there. Now, we can all discuss what that is, what actually happened to make this happen, but this is not something, obviously, that most people are going to have experience doing. And even though Trump won a pretty comfortable victory in the electoral vote count, a lot of those races were still tight, even if they're within 5 points. Like, we feel like that's a big victory, but it isn't. It is not a big victory. If you win an election 52 to 47, 52% to 47%, say, in a particular state, it's not if 5% of the people change their votes, because if 1% change their vote, right, it suddenly goes 51-48, and there's 1% that's voting for some independent or whatever. So it's not that many people in a lot of instances. So it's still dangerously close. Again, in one sense, Trump won comfortably. He won clearly and concisely, and he won everything that was up for grabs. But these things were still up for grabs. They were still way too close. In a sane world, my friends, in a sane world, Trump would have won by 60 points, right? If we didn't have deceitful media and some of the things I talked about as far as how people are attracted to candidates because of their race, gender, ethnicity, and all that stuff. The radical left, who's got absolutely no moral or, well, they just got no moral bedrock, nothing of substance to build their ideology upon. If you got rid of all that stuff, all the lies and deceit, and if the people who voted for things that were absolutely evil and were trying to tell you that your little boy could be a little girl tomorrow, if all that stuff stopped, I mean, there wouldn't be a single vote for Kamala Harris. So anyway, that's the world that we live in. That's what happened in the election. We have since, of course, seen many things, as we've talked about here, improve dramatically, including inflation getting under control, including the federal budget being reduced, still not where it needs to be, spending being reined in. You see the border secured. We go through this stuff on a regular basis. So America is much the better for not electing her. But now she's back in the scene. She's had almost a year now, not quite, about 9 months since she was out there trying to get your vote. So she's now written a book, 107 Days. So it's time to go out and it's time to promote this book. She goes on to Stephen Colbert. And yes, there's people out there that are calling, two losers, right? You got Colbert, who's lost his show. You got Kamala Harris, who lost the presidency. That's not how I look at this. That's not how I would frame this. Kamala's dangerous. Kamala is entertaining in the sense if you just listen to what she's saying. It's funny when she can't, it's funny to hear when she doesn't have the political power to make it into law or the way that the executive branch operates. So, but it's still very close. And Colbert, in spite of his show being objectively stupid and ridiculous and catering to the low information voter and so forth, which you'll hear when I play this soundbite, he's still been successful. I mean, he's been being paid $20 million a year to produce a show. He and 200 people that I still don't know what they do, to produce a show that fewer and fewer people are watching. So, all that being said, Kamala sits down with Colbert, and I want to play this clip where she's talking about her decision not to run for governor and her decision actually to stay out of politics. And I want you to listen to this, and we're going to talk about this as the program comes together here today. Before I do that, though, my friends, remember, if you are a business owner, if you are a person in marketing, HR at a business, if you are needing items with your logo on it, check out Red, White, and Brand. RedWhiteandBrand.com. That is a division of this program, actually, something that I've done in the past. I sold the original business 6 years ago. We've reopened this now that our non-compete is up, and we're here to help put your logo on almost anything. And it can be put on a lot of stuff, my friends. Promotional products, apparel, other merchandise. It can be on banners, tablecloths, trade show stuff, job fairs, giveaways, premiums. RedWhiteandBrand.com. Promo code Todd will save you 10% on your purchase. And if you place your order online, which you don't have to, you can reach out to us through the website there. But if you go through the website to purchase an order, you'll get free shipping as well. RedWhiteandBrand.com, promo code Todd. All right. That being said, let's listen to this exchange that I just queued this up before we came live or started broadcasting the program here. Kamala Harris sitting down with Stephen Colbert, talking about her book, really talking about her decision not to run for governor of the People's Republic of California, and just politics in general. And I want you to hear this as she's out there trying to promote this book. Here's Kamala with Stephen Colbert.
You said you're going to sit this one out. Why are you sitting this one out? Are you saving yourself for a different office that might be?
No. Of course, the crowd loves that, insinuating that, hey, maybe you're not running for governor because you're going to wait to run for president again. And you listen to the crowd erupt in cheers. This is not real. But anyway, just listen to the cheers.
Obviously, people project onto their hopes and dreams.
And honestly,
hopes and dreams.
It's more perhaps basic than that. I am a devout public servant. I have spent my entire career in service of the people. And
pause, by the way. Now she's selling a book that she's trying to listen. I just have to say this. Now she's gonna conflate this issue. She's gonna start talking about firefighters and other people whose jobs are paid for by public dollars, by taxpayer dollars. She's conflating this because I'm gonna say this in the in the vast majority of cases, becoming a politician today, I'm not saying it's universally true. Some people would say this is universally true, what I'm about to say, but it's not universal. There are exceptions. But very few people are entering politics to become public servants. I'll say that again. Politics is not, especially at the national stage, becoming a member of Congress, becoming a member of the Senate, for the vast majority of people is not a type of public service. In fact, for a lot of these folks, it's become a career path. Some of them have been there half a century. That's not public service. Public service would say to you, hey, I've done my part. Public service, by the way, is what George Washington did. George Washington, who was our nation's first president, in case I've got a leftist tuned in here today. But take it easy, I'm just playing. George Washington basically was unanimous for the people, inside the government, the early founders. He was unanimously who they wanted to be president, which in and of itself speaks volumes to me about who George Washington was. And no, he wasn't perfect. I'm tired of going through all that. I'm not defending slavery or anything like that, but he had a lot of good characteristics, a lot of good traits. And they all wanted him to be the president. And after his second term as president, some of them wanted him to continue being president. He said, look, if you can't make this nation survive without me as president, it's not going to make it. So you better find somebody else. He served 8 years. All he wanted to do, according to what I've read, was be a Presbyterian minister. Was never able to do that. He died not too long after refusing to serve a third term. But anyway, that's not what we've got today. We've got people who tried to profit off of the office. I got to tell you, I'm not even a fan, and I know this happens on both sides. And again, I don't know what you do about this, because I'm not saying that people shouldn't be able to tell about their experiences in government, but it seems a little wrong to me. I don't have the solution. I'm just pointing out what I think is partially the problem. You can go and have these, be in the White House or have these connections. You're elected supposedly to be a public servant, to serve the people. And then you come out and you have these multi-million-dollar book deals to tell what was happening or whatever, tell your story. And again, we're free to pay or not to pay for those things. It just doesn't seem right to me. And it doesn't seem like you can say with a straight face, I'm a public servant, when you lose the election and then you don't really have to do anything. Like, what is she doing to support herself right now? She doesn't have to do anything because there's all this money that's tied into this. I got to take a break, though. Quick time out, my friends. You're listening here to Conservative, Not Bitter Talk. We'll pick this up on the other side of the break. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. We're going to continue talking about Kamala Harris's remarks here to Stephen Colbert. But again, I was harping on before the break this concept of being a public servant in politics today. I'm not saying that your local county councilman or someone like that is not trying to do a public service. I'm not saying that. But I am saying at the federal level, at the level of the federal government, the idea that these are people who are just feeling like they're doing their part to serve this nation. There may be some, but most of them are using this as a career path. Most of them are using this as a networking event. Most of them are using this as a way to sell books, to become relevant in the discourse, to become a ambassador somewhere in the future, to be a pundit on CNN or whatever, right? This is how people view this, to increase their brand awareness. In fact, what's funny to me is that this is the sort of thing that was said about Trump. See, it's actually, for a person like Trump, this is a form. I know that some people can't stand this. It makes their heads, makes them want to blow their heads up. Just listen, metaphorically, when I say something like that. But when you are a billionaire, and I'm not saying that you just have to be wealthy or uber wealthy to be a public servant, but when you step aside from that position, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, Trump lost his net worth decreased in his first term in office. So that is a sign to me of what real public service looks like. He had nothing to gain from this. People act as though he's the one that's benefiting from the system. When I look out there and I see all these people, and by the way, that reminds me of this debate over the bill that Josh Hawley is pushing about insider trading. I think everybody, 100%, this idea that politicians are selling stock, congressmen are selling stock at just the right time, individual stocks, that's reprehensible. You have a meeting, you realize, oh man, someone's about to go to war. Let's buy some stock in the companies that produce things that are used when people go to war. And that has happened. And their portfolios skyrocket. In fact, there's at least one, there might be more out there today, companies who monitor the trades of politicians and pass that information on to the consumer so you could theoretically mirror the investments made by these people. And some of these people, what do they name it? The Pelosi Act. But some of these folks outperform the Dow or the S&P or whatever. They do very well. They're very successful. And nobody likes that. I don't care if it's a Republican doing that, a Democrat doing that. That's reprehensible. That is an abuse of your power. That's not what you're there for. However, I also don't believe that you should have to sell everything you own. In fact, I heard Rick Scott and Josh Hawley. I don't have time to play this. I want to stay on Kamala here. But Rick Scott and a senator from the state of Florida, former governor of Florida, and Josh Hawley, senator from the state of Missouri, were kind of going at it. Josh Hawley was going after billionaires. I think Josh Hawley is trying to put himself in that group of potential presidential candidates alongside J.D. Vance and probably Marco Rubio. Maybe Josh Hawley is positioning and jockeying as well. And so Rick Scott says, look, I don't like the connotation here that just because I'm wealthy that I'm the problem. I understand nobody wants politicians using their position of power to get themselves personally rich, whether that means insider trading. I would say whether that means book deals. Personally, I wouldn't feel right about that if I was a politician. And then I step out of politics and make $20 million on a book or something. That just doesn't, I don't know. It just doesn't compute for me. That's not what a public servant would do. Wouldn't you say all the proceeds would go to further reduce the federal deficit? I don't know. Something like that. Anyway, the idea that these folks are public servants, by and large, is a laughable notion to me on the federal side. So that's what she's saying here. She's trying to come up with a narrative to explain why she's not running for governor, why she's not running for president. And the obvious answer is that people don't want her. People don't want her to be president. They never elected her to be the candidate, the nominee, I should say, the Democrat Party. I mean, they did at the convention. They technically did at the convention, but there was no primary process for her. Some people say, well, she was on there. I mean, she was going to be Biden's vice president, his number two. It's the same thing, but it's not the same thing, especially if you had other legitimate choices, which, of course, on the Democrat side, I don't know that exists. But they could at least put other names of other crazy people on there that they could have chosen from. So, but she's out here trying to create a narrative that, again, at the risk of sounding like I'm taunting her for losing, I'm not, but she's trying to save face here. She's trying to make money and save face, give a story, a narrative that explains why she's not running for governor and why she's not going to run for president either. But I think ultimately at its core, the reason she's not is because not even Democrats want her. She continues here with Colbert.
I thought a lot about running for governor. I love my state. I love California. I've served as just elected district attorney, attorney general, and senator. But to be very candid with you, when I was young in my career, I had to defend my decision to become a prosecutor with my family. And one of the points that I made is, why is it then when we think we want to improve a system or change it, that we're always on the outside on bended knee or trying to break down the door.
It's funny for me to hear this coming from the Democrat because, see, the Democrat Party has become a mechanism whereby the system, the government grows. And if she wants to truly know, if that's not just some rhetorical question or some step in the process of telling this story, trying to make it make sense to the listener, to the viewer, if she wants to take this a step further and actually look at who makes the government big enough to where the average person feels like they are helpless, it's not the conservative, it's the leftist, it's the liberal. In many cases, it's even the moderate Republican who's okay with the government growing, at least maybe not to the same rate as the left, but certainly okay with more control being taken by the government, more liberty being given up by the American the American taxpayer, the American voter. So she says, I used to think that you have to be on the inside to fight this. She's gonna eventually tell us that the inside is so broken she doesn't even think that's worth it anymore. But she continues here.
Shouldn't we also be inside the system? And that has been my career. And recently I made the decision that for now, I don't want to go back in the system. I think it's broken.
It's broken.
I think there's so much, there are so many good people who are public servants.
Now pause. I started when I heard this, I said, oh yeah, Hillary Clinton, AOC, Ilhan Omar, these are great people out here who are just serving the public, right? That's where I thought this was going. Remember, she's talking about federal office, but listen who she starts talking about here. It's not any of those people.
Who do such good work. Teachers and firefighters and police officers and nurses and scientists.
Crowd cheer. This crowd is so... This is low information voter 101. Scientists. As though, of course, the unspoken joke there is that we got to have scientists funded by the government. Republicans hate science. That's why they're cutting government spending as it pertains to a lot of things, including science. Of course, a lot of this so-called science is nothing more than taxpayer-funded, wishful lining of the pocketbooks for these folks. Some of this science is anything but science. A lot of it is nothing more than information that's used for political propaganda. But that gets cheers from the people in this audience, which of course is predictable and doesn't surprise me anyway. So that's her story. I got a little bit more of this to play, but as I look at the clock, I probably should hold off on playing the rest of that until the next segment of the program, my friends. Ever notice how some families seem to have a plan that lasts for generations? That's not by accident, by the way, my friends. Full Suite Wealth works with people who want their wealth to make a difference for years to come. Their team brings together high-level investment strategies like private equity, private credit, and options strategies with expert legal advice as well. It's all about making sure your vision becomes a reality for the people that you love today and tomorrow, well into the future. If you're looking to do more than just manage money, if you want to leave a mark and build something lasting, take a look at Full Suite Wealth. FullSuiteWealth.com is the website. That's where you can go. FullSuiteWealth.com. Build your legacy. Secure your future. Friends, I'm going to take a quick time out here. When we get back, I want to play the rest of this Kamala soundbite with Stephen Colbert. In the meantime, sit tight, my friends. You're listening to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Third and final segment of today. Last segment of the entire week. I know that is a very, very upsetting thing to hear, but we will be back on Monday. And you know what? There may have been something you missed in the meantime. You can check it out between now and sometime over the weekend. You can go to our website, toddhuffshow.com. You can go listen to this show wherever you listen to podcasts. Lots of ways to catch up on things you might have missed, my friends. So, I want to finish here playing this soundbite from Kamala. She's, again, saying that she doesn't want to be in the system. It's broken. It's broken. That's what she says. Of course, my guess is that they focus group this. This is obviously scripted. I mean, that's how these things go. There's no authenticity. Again, if you want authenticity, I know this will upset people, but if you want off-the-cuff authenticity, and I'm not saying he doesn't ever play some games or, he's negotiating in public, so sometimes he says things that, he's really trying to negotiate or use his leverage, not really be transparent or show his full hand. But Trump is the one, I'm telling you, he's the one. That's why he gets mocked for the things that he says. They're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this guy says that. Well, it's because it's not scripted. He just sits down and okay, ask me whatever you want. I'll tell you what I think. I heard a question the other day someone asked him, and he couldn't hear what they were saying. I forget the phrase that he heard, but he thought the person was saying you nominated a person that was named this, and he didn't know what the person was saying. Of course, the media suddenly acts like, well, see, he's becoming incoherent like Biden. And of course, it's just silliness. It's just the way that he does it. It's not this scripted focus group stuff as it is with people like Kamala Harris and people candidly on the Republican side as well. So she's done some research here. She thinks she can save face by blaming the broken system that goes right in line with the narrative of how Trump is a danger and a threat to our democracy. He's overthrowing our system. The courts are out of whack. Congress is having authority ripped away from it. Trump's acting like a Nazi. He's deporting people with secret police. He's putting them in concentration camps. All of this nonsense. That's why Kamala can get away with saying this stupid stuff, because the overall narrative talks about these same things. And so here we are. So Kamala is trying to sell books and save face here. So here is the final 45 seconds or so of what she says to Stephen Colbert when he's asking her about, are you running for another office? Wink, wink. Are you going to put your name in the hat for the Democrat nominee for president? And she says no, the system's broken. Here's the final part of this part of the interview with Stephen Colbert.
And so it's not about them, but, I believe, and I always believed that as fragile as our democracy is, our systems would be strong enough to defend
so sad.
our most fundamental principles. And I think right now that they're not as strong as they need to be, and I just don't want to, for now, I don't want to go back in the system. I want to travel the country. I want to listen to people. I want to talk with people. And I don't want it to be transactional where I'm asking for their vote.
Yeah, I want them to go pay $35 for my book. Well, I mean, what is this? I don't want it to be transactional. I don't want to ask them for their vote. Instead, I'll ask them for $35 to go buy my stupid book, 107 Days, which, of course, is also going to be, I haven't read the dumb thing, but presumably this book's going to be about all the success they had running the shortest presidential campaign in American history. They almost pulled off a victory. It's not to be viewed as some sort of a loss. It's actually to be viewed as some magnificent success. They never should have pulled it off, blah, blah, blah. Of course, that's just nonsense. They failed. And I think the longer Kamala would have been campaigning, I think the fewer people would have voted for her. At least those who were paying attention anyway. This is the game. This is not serious. She acts like she's just heartbroken. I thought our system was tougher. I thought our system was stronger than this. I thought our system could prevent people from turning it into a dictatorship, but I don't know. I'm scared, Stephen. I'm scared that this is going to happen, and I think the best place for me to save our democracy is out here selling my book outside the system, not to be inside the system. That's her story, and she's sticking to it, my friends. There you go. So, Kamala Harris on with Stephen Colbert. Folks, let's face it, there are a lot of companies out there that do not share your Christian values. The good news is that you do not have to invest in them. At 48 Financial, they specialize in biblically responsible investing. They'll help you screen out companies that go against your faith and your values and help you create a plan that is tailored to your specific goals. And they'll handle the heavy lifting as well so that you can focus on what really matters. If you want to see what your current investments, the investments you have in a Roth IRA, in a 401k, in maybe it's stocks, whatever you've got, if you want to see if those companies are in alignment with your values, you can take a free assessment at 48financial.com/Todd. Again, that's 48financial.com/Todd. It's free to do. I've taken it. It's pretty easy and painless, and you'll be able to see if your investments align with your values. 48 Financial, helping you align your money with your mission. My friends, you're going to hear the music kick in here in just a second. I am out of time for this week. I appreciate so much you listening to this program, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We will see you on Monday. SDG.